Hello, and welcome to the Three Links Oddcast, your podcast for all things having to do with Odd Fellowship. And now, here are your hosts.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another great episode of the Three Links Oddcast. I'm one of your hosts, Ainsley Heilich.
I'm another of your hosts, Toby Hansen, and once again, we have cheerful special guest host, Christopher McHale joining us. Brother Chris.
Hello, it's wonderful to be here, and finally you guys are able to hear me.
That's right. We got all the technical glitches worked out, and it only took the first 40 minutes of the show to do it. So we are happy to have you here. Well, and I understand you want to mention our wonderful sponsors at Pig and a Pug.
You know, I was going to say that it took us 40 minutes to get this all set up and 40 minutes bathing with Pig and a Pug bath products. Those scent merchants based in the Bitterroot Valley of Montana. Oh, my word. We'll hear a little bit from them a little bit later in the show, though.
Excellent. There's nothing like being nice and clean and well soaped, especially on a warm day like today. Well, for this episode of the Three Links Oddcast, we have a guest who's joining us. He's a multi-instrumentalist, a songwriter, a wonderful performer, and his name is Scott Adams. As some of you may be thinking, oh, great, the Dilbert guy. No, this is a different Scott Adams. This is the Scott Adams who is currently a music teacher, educator, performer, and just an all-around great guy in the Seattle area. Thank you for joining us, Scott, and welcome to the Three Links Oddcast.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Wonderful. Well, to get started here, let's have a little bit of a biographical background about yourself. Who you are, where you're from, what you've done, anything you want to share with the general public at large.
All right. So I grew up in Spokane, Washington, and my dad was an advertising guy, and as a kid I got, and this is fresh on my mind because I'm basically going through what's left of my family's stuff, you know, because my parents have passed away, and so I'm seeing all these newspaper articles. Like, you know, my dad, you know, he gets a promotion. It's Spokane, small town. Every little thing someone does goes in the newspaper. When my mom did well at golf, you know, there's an article in the paper about that, and a picture of her with some of her friends, and that, you know, that they won this cup for their you know, golfing club. And there are pictures of me for the bank advertisement, you know, like my dad, free talent, you know, to have your little kid show up in the bank ad. So there's this picture of this couple, this, you know, really attractive young couple with their boat that they just bought thanks to the bank, you know, and I'm one of their two children, you know, but I didn't know these people, but it's just cute. So to find all this stuff after all these years, but anyway, grew up in Spokane, didn't really get excited about too many things as a kid. Even music class at school, you know, I got a 2 in that class, 2 out of 3, average, pass, go away. Until I got into rock and roll, and rock and roll changed my life. You know, it really, I just got excited by the energy of it all, and started playing guitar when I was about 12. Played all through high school. Got into, you know, speed, thrash metal, hardcore punk, stuff like that. And then figured I was going to grow up and go to college, and went to Washington State University, state school.
The finest cheese-making university in the state of Washington.
Indeed. And also a great veterinary school.
Yes.
And given all that, I studied psychology. So, but I played in bands the whole way through, and I really, you know, I brought my guitar to school as, you know, just like, well, hopefully I'll have some time to play. Ended up starting a band with some friends, and, you know, we played all these basement keg parties and stuff like that, and it was a blast. And so I kept playing, worked, you know, odd jobs, and I moved over to Seattle, and went to Cornish College of the Arts.
Woohoo!
Where I met, the very first orientation day, I met Toby Hansen. I'm really glad I met Toby so soon, because I think I ran sound for Toby's band like maybe one of the first weekends I was even going to the school, which is hilarious because I'm definitely not qualified to be a good sound man, but it was fun to do that. But yeah, went to Cornish, studied composition, and continued to dabble with as many instruments as I could. At that time, still guitar player, but I picked up the banjo to play in Toby's band. I was gravitationally pulled to the accordion, even though I played with Toby, and not really, I mean, the accordion was obviously cool, but it didn't really resonate with me until I actually played one. And then I was like, I never stopped. I had to have one, and I've, and that's been like over 30 years now. No, over 20 years.
Over 20. Don't make us any older than we are, Scott.
Yeah. Anyway, so graduated from Cornish, have been teaching little kids to play music, mostly piano and guitar lessons, a few ukulele, a couple accordion students. I put out 4 of my own records. My band is called Birds May Bite, because it turns out I have a common name, Scott Adams.
Yeah.
And the cartoon money was, the checks get sent to a different Scott Adams for some reason. I mean, I did all the work, but
Yeah.
I smell a cease and desist order coming.
yeah. Yeah, and I played in Toby's band. I've played in a number of bands. I've done kind of like free jazz kind of stuff. I've done a band with 4 accordions called Hell's Bellows. Nice. I played in a klezmer band just until 2020 for like almost 8 years. I love to explore and keep learning when it comes to music stuff, and I think this will come up later too. It's just I like to focus my energy because it's kind of frenetic, and if I don't focus somewhat, then I get just nowhere on anything. Did I cover me enough? I think.
Well, how about this? You said that rock music changed your life. What was it that changed your life? Like me personally, I remember, and I always talk about this. The first cassette tape that I ever owned that was like my own, Rod Stewart's "Blondes Have More Fun." It was like not long after it came out, but my dad let me pick out whichever tape I wanted out of his car. And as soon as I saw the cover of that, I'm like, hell yeah, I want to listen to that. And I was a young kid and just fell in love with Rod Stewart and grew into loving the Faces. And, I still love Rod Stewart to this day. What was it that did it for you? I mean, you said that you grew up in, hardcore punk stuff too, and we share a similar background in that. And I'd love to, talk about that too. But like, what changed everything for you?
Well, there were a number of things, even before rock and roll, like the Sound of Music soundtrack, like I enjoyed good harmony and good melody and stuff. The Bee Gees early on.
Yeah.
Like a lot of AM radio stuff, like that era of Rod Stewart too. And then later on hearing his earlier stuff too. And then, like Cheap Trick and then just the, like, I got into I think, along with adolescence, the really heavy music, it goes pretty well,
Yeah. So like, what era did you get into heavy music?
Well, it was like early 80s, 81,
All right.
82, and, got into, Zeppelin, The Who, Sabbath.
Yeah.
I think almost every day of my freshman year in high school, I had the headphones on and, Sabbath. And I remember that, Christopher, you were wearing a cool Sabbath shirt pretty much the only time I met you.
Yeah, well, it's funny because there's a lot of people that have said like, oh, every time I've seen you, you're wearing a Black Sabbath shirt. And to be fair, it's usually true.
You should really get a third shirt to wear. You should.
Yeah. Well, one of these days I will. You know, if Black Sabbath puts
it is
out
a
another
very
good
nice Black
record,
Sabbath
then I can
shirt.
see myself getting another Black Sabbath shirt.
Yeah, and hey, who doesn't love Black Sabbath? It's perfect for the whole family.
It's good fun. Yeah.
It is. I have a story, you know, if I can sidetrack here.
Absolutely. Take the sidetrack.
I had I am not a devil worshiper. However,
Okay, now we're
Hang up.
gonna go back and correct the show notes there.
Yeah.
'Cause
I could have swore we had it in the thing that you were a devil
I
worshiper.
wore my special satanic shirt for you.
Yeah.
Gosh darn it. I'm so sorry, guys. I think I sent out the wrong show notes for this one.
I bit the head off a bat for no reason.
Oh, man.
Oh.
I hope you sanitized it first. I would hate for the bat to get COVID.
Yeah, totally.
So as you were saying, Scott, you're not a devil worshiper.
Okay.
But I played one in high school in order to like keep the big kids from beating up on me.
That's brilliant.
Yeah.
So I had a really cool Sabbath shirt, and I think this was probably a bootleg shirt, but it was really cool. It was on both sides. It had like upside down cross. It had 666. It had all this shit on it. It was so
Had
cool.
everything.
And
Everything you could ever need to scare every
Yeah.
mom.
Did it
And
have
my
skulls
mom-
on it, though?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
skulls,
okay.
too.
The
I wish
Holy
I
Trinity,
still-
the upside down cross, the skulls, and the pentagram. Yeah.
All of it, and this,
Yeah.
Yes.
which the listening audience,
The Maloik.
yeah, but by design you can't see it.
Yeah.
Have to kill you. But my mom faithfully,
Yes.
washed and ironed that, and the Aussie shirt with the burning crosses on the back, all that stuff. And she even brought me to Seattle to see a Slayer show when I was 16 years old. I
Nice.
couldn't have come by myself.
That's because your mom was awesome.
My mom was awesome, and she was so sweet, and she was just like, I don't understand that crap you listen to, but I'm just a sweet, kind, supportive mom.
So
Yes.
what era of Slayer would that have been?
Show No Mercy tour. So
Oh,
first
okay.
record. So
So me being a young kid, hanging out at the record store, like as you do as a young kid when you realize that music is going to be your thing. I remember the guy, I mean, he was probably like in his mid 20s there, was totally pushing the new Slayer record.
yeah.
And, I had never heard them before, but I saw the cover of Divine Intervention when he handed it to me. And I said, of course, I'm going to give you all my lunch money for the week to buy this record. And I went home, and you know how Divine Intervention opens up with that crazy drum solo? Like my life was changed. I was like, what the hell did I just listen to?
Yeah.
But the thing that talked me into buying the record, I mean, apart from the crazy artwork on the cover, was the guy said if I bought it, he would even throw in a pin, right? I still have this Slayer pin to this day. And it's
Nice.
like, 25, 26 years later.
So if that guy out there is still out there and he somehow listens,
Yeah. Thanks. You changed my life. And I'm not saying it's for the better, and I'm not saying it's for the worse, but you definitely introduced me to Slayer way too young.
How old were you?
Oh God. I think Divine Intervention came out in 94, so I would have been at the time 12. It came out, I think, September 24th, 1994.
Wow, that's just very specific.
that's very specific.
I think, I
I
remember
love how
looking
you
it
you
up
had to
not
think
that long
for a
ago
second
to
and
try
be like,
and...
how old was I? And then you just whip out the whole
Well,
perfect date.
It became a thing because I worked at a screen printing place for a little while in Missoula, and I worked with a bunch of heavy metal dudes. So what did you do apart from sit around and like talk about music? And I whipped out I got a Slayer pin when I bought Divine Intervention story, right? Because obviously everyone's blown away by the pin,
They're totally, yeah.
So I had to look it up when Divine Intervention came out. I got it the day that it came out because the guy was like, "Oh, here's your pin,"
Gotcha.
and I've still got the pin. So that's why I know it came out on that specific
I mean,
day.
we're all clearly impressed that you have that pin. So
Yeah, no, you guys were you guys were literally on the edge of your seats as to whether or not I still had the pin, and I do.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for verifying that. So far in this episode, we've learned two very important things. Scott, not a devil worshiper, and Christopher still has his Slayer pin.
Yep.
Now, of course, we actually have another question that is Oddfellows related here. It's not just that I haven't seen you for a while and I want to catch up on old times. Because we're doing a podcast here for Oddfellows and they listen to it, we've been talking a lot during this first season of the Three Links Oddcast about membership. So we've been talking a lot about, what can lodges do? How can they keep members engaged during the pandemic? How can they get new members? How can they improve communication with current members or with potential members? And we had the idea, we said, what if we could talk to someone who was a member and left? And that's when I said, I happen to know the person to talk to. And that would be you, because you did, in fact, join the Ballard Alki Oddfellows Lodge at a certain point. And you had some experiences. You went to a meeting or two, and then you didn't come back. And so we would like to find out a little bit more about what it was that influenced that decision. Was it an active decision? Was it just, oh, this isn't terribly engaging, so I'm not going to go back, and maybe I'll go back in the future, and you just drifted away? So this is sort of like a 15-year too late exit interview for why you're no longer a member of the lodge.
What? I'm no longer a member?
Yeah.
I did not take an active role in deleting myself from the role. Did I get deleted?
You got dropped for non-payment of dues, because what happens, just in case anybody is wondering about this, if a member doesn't pay their dues, and this varies depending on what jurisdiction you're in, but Washington, for example, if you don't pay your dues at the beginning of the year, you become a member not in good standing, and there's a certain grace period during which you can pay your dues and get current for the year. After that grace period has passed, the lodge can drop you from its member rolls for non-payment of dues. So essentially that's what happened. If you didn't show up, you didn't pay your dues the following year, you got dropped. And that was probably like 15 years ago now. So
just out of curiosity, how long is that grace period typically?
It depends on what's in the bylaws for the lodge. In Buckley number 75, which is the bylaws I'm most familiar with because I wrote them, the grace period is 13 weeks. So after 13 weeks, then the lodge can take action to drop you for non-payment.
What made you pick 13 weeks?
Because I had seen that in other places. I don't remember if it was the Sovereign Grand Lodge Code or the Washington Digest, or if it was just some other lodge bylaws where I saw that. But it's actually something that I took from somewhere else when I updated the Buckley bylaws.
Gotcha.
I think ours is a little shorter, but also kind of use the discretion of the person and stuff like that. But usually if they haven't paid their dues by the time per capita comes around, that's when they get the big old NPD.
Yeah. So, for example, in Buckley, most everybody pays their dues in January. That makes it easy. And so the 13 weeks, by the end of March, if you've not paid by then you can be dropped for non-payment. So if you look at your dues card and you're a member of Buckley 75, it will say on the bottom of the card, not valid after, and usually March 31st and the following year. So in your case, Christopher, would say not valid after March 31st, 2022.
Fair enough.
So there's a little piece of information for our listeners about members not paying and how they make their way out of the lodge. So tell us, Scott, to start off, what was your first initial impression just with joining the lodge and getting into it?
So I remember that you and then several other people I knew were already members.
Mm-hmm.
And that was cool. And I was y'all encouraged me. It's like, you should check this out. This is fun, and this is an interesting thing to do. And so I showed up and I went through the things that you do, and the initiation was amazing. And I know I can't say anything about that.
Yeah, because there might be non-members who listen, so we don't.
We have a sniper trained on your window at the moment, so if you reveal too much,
The red dot.
yeah.
Actually, guy, I hate to disappoint you. Because of the heat today, I had to tell the sniper to knock off at 4:00 today.
No,
But he will be back tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. So he'll be ready, just in case.
Gary knocked on my door to use the bathroom.
Oh, it was Gary.
Once you told him that he didn't need to do the job, he needed to use the restroom. So I gave him a beer. So he's out on the front porch. So if you need, he's close.
yeah. The eagle has landed. Send him the text.
Yeah.
You know what? That's great. If you got an extra beer for Gary, that's wonderful. Tell him that the bonus is going to be a little bit late. We had a little bit of an accounting snafu.
Yeah.
But we will take care of the permitting for the next job. And he should have the bonus no later than July 14th. So just let him know that if he comes back in the house again.
And I think his message was something to the effect of, as long as he gets it within 13 weeks, he's cool.
Okay. Hey, that's what I appreciate about being an odd fellow. There's a lot of understanding there.
Yeah.
So you Scott, you went through our amazingly impressive initiations that we do at Ballard, because we're amazing there. And then what was it like after the initiation? You go through this blur of all of this stuff that you see and do, and these things that you learn, and then you're in the lodge.
Yeah, and then I remember, being in this huge room, this huge ballroom, beautiful ballroom, and it was essentially felt like kind of a business meeting. Just here are these projects that we're working on. Here are the logistics. And then there's protocol, and there's certain things that you should remember and do correctly. And not being a strong rememberer of even my own song lyrics, I ran afoul of one particular member, which I didn't really remember this until you, Toby, reminded me of this story. But there was a certain member who called me out and corrected me, and I don't know if he was rude or not. And I don't remember if that's what was a big deal for me at the time or not. But I know that happened, and I once you reminded me, I do remember that. So I forgot to do something that I was supposed to do because I was just kind of, it's like, oh, here I am, and I was taught something once, probably.
Yes.
I didn't remember it, and so, and I don't know if I was publicly embarrassed about that or not, but I didn't have the protocol right, and I remembered that the projects were cool, like, community things that who wouldn't believe in the things that were being done.
Yeah.
The projects. I think that at the end of the day, I'm not sure if I ever, whether that happened or not, would ever have been somebody who was like gonna work out, just because of my. I never have enough time to do the musical things that I want to do, and it's, even with girlfriends, with other friendships, with going to see other people's bands, all the things that one can potentially do with their time. I don't think I ever would have worked out, just because I feel I'm not even the busiest person, but I feel like I want to focus on this.
Hey, approximately how old were you at the time?
I think my memory is that this was around 2001. So that makes me, I was 13.
Oh, okay.
No, I was, let's see, I was 32, about 32, 33 years old.
Okay.
So around that age. So I wasn't a kid. I had, I'd gone to school two different times, and studied, and kind of, the best of my ability, kind of focused that I want to do this music thing, and to make a living, I'll teach people, teach kids, and I just kind of gotten that lined up at that point.
Sure.
Now, there's a lot of really good information in what you said there. So let's talk about these kind of one at a time. So the first thing that you said was the initiation was really impressive, and specifically, it made an impression on you. So there was a lot going on. You got a lot of information. You saw a lot of stuff in the initiation. It was really kind of engaging. And would you say that it made you excited for what you thought was coming next?
Yeah. Yeah. For sure. Yeah, and I think it's designed to do that. And I feel like, without, I don't think giving it away anything, it spoke to you have a limited time in your life,
Yeah.
and choose it wisely.
And I think that's the purpose of the initiation is to make an impression on the candidate so that the candidate realizes why it's in their interest to band together for mutual aid and support. And so I think in that way, the initiation was really successful for you. But the next thing that you said is you walked into this big, beautiful room, and it was like a business meeting. And so you had this wonderful initiation experience. You were taught the things, signs, passwords, stuff like that, all the stuff that we use while we're working in a lodge. But then you're sort of dropped into this business meeting as business resumes. I think it's, item 14 or 15 on the order of business, where you finish the business meeting, you have the financial report, and you have new business and unfinished business and go to the order, and you close. So having gone through this amazing initiation, then you're dropped into a business meeting. You're going, okay, what is this? Who are these people? Who am I with? I think that right there's that moment that all of us who've been initiated and joined the order have gone through, where we then get dropped into the last quarter of a business meeting, and we have a lot of questions, and we know that there's something going on, and we feel... I still remember the night that I was initiated, and the only reason that I felt connected to what was happening in the lodge after the initiation is Brother Rich Osborne came over to me as soon as I was sat down on the bench wearing the white collar, and he said, I understand you play the piano. We need a musician in the lodge. And he led me over to the piano and said, the closing ode is My Country 'Tis of Thee. Don't play it in too low of a key. You'll know when to play it. And that was all the more I knew about it. It was because I kept going to meetings after that going, okay, what's going on here? That I actually learned what was going on there. So for you to say I was dropped into this business meeting and I really had no clue, I think that tells us a lot. For lodges who initiate a new member, I've heard about this happening in other places, and I think it's something that a lot of lodges would benefit from, which is you initiate a new member, have the sponsor of that new member be present for the initiation, and sit next to that new member for that first meeting and maybe the first couple of meetings, so that that new member can get into the flow of what's going in the lodge. Because as you said, you were just, everybody shook your hand. You said, hey, welcome, brother, you're an odd fellow now. And then you were dropped into the lodge with no clue what was going on.
Yeah, but I mean, I didn't feel like it was, it was understandable.
Yeah. still,
Yeah.
without having a lot of context, it's hard to feel connected to what's going on.
Yeah. It's funny because when I heard your story, like if that had happened to me or some variant on that, I'd be like, I would have stuck around longer just because, like, give me a job. And then, because I mean, like so many people, I'm socially awkward, especially, like unless I know the people really well, I'm a
Mhm.
totally socially awkward person. And, but if I have a job, or if I don't have a job, I have a drink in my hand, like
Yeah.
because just it's a crutch. But having a job
Mhm.
helps, and getting you involved like that in that capacity, one that you're comfortable with and you could excel at, Toby. Um, that would have made a difference for me. Not that there was such a niche available, but I can see why it stuck for you because instantly you're like, oh, I got to play the piano. Cool.
Now, Christopher, I'll put you on the spot here. When you were initiated, what was it like for you to come into that first lodge meeting with your white collar as an initiate and sit there and sort of see all the business of the lodge go whizzing past you?
I actually had a very similar experience to Scott. In although I knew what the initiation ritual consisted of, I sort of made my way into Odd Fellowship by collecting weird things and just kind of having an interest in all things kind of weird. Knew about the Odd Fellows, went through the initiation, and I was very excited about that. But it is kind of like this odd crescendo. You're working all the way up, and this initiation is meant to be like this powerful thing. And then before you know it, you're, dropped into, basically a board meeting, and you are like, kind of like, what the heck, what, how long was I asleep for, So yeah, and it's, and especially those lodges that have kind of an older, contingent to them, it for someone that is not a social butterfly, it's totally off-putting. You just sometimes it's hard finding common ground, and yeah, you do just get dropped in and you're kind of none the wiser, and sometimes you don't know what to expect going into that. You think, well, you start off with this crazy ritual that I'm meant to remember for the rest of my life. What's next? And then it's like, new business, which we all know takes 2 hours, and everyone talks about, how easy it was to find parking outside or whatever, so you're just thinking like, what on earth am I doing here? And I do 100% agree with what Scott said. Like, if he had a job or some sort of purpose, like going right into it, then that makes an easy transition. You're not just standing there like, watching the clock or whatnot,
That's another thing that I've heard other lodges do really successfully. When they have someone new come in, not only are there some lodges who say, hey, the sponsor has to be here and is responsible for getting the new member up to speed in the lodge, they will assign jobs to new members in the lodge so that those new members have a pathway for getting involved in the lodge. Because as you said, Scott, if you're not someone who's naturally going to go around and say hello and introduce yourself to everybody, it's harder to get integrated into a social system like a lodge unless you have a defined pathway. Now, this is one of the things that joining a lodge is great for, because if you're someone who wants to make friends and doesn't know a lot of people and doesn't have a lot of outside activities, it's really easy to go into a lodge and say, okay, I'm the warden now, so I'm going to set the regalia out, make sure that everybody has regalia for the meeting, and pick it up afterwards, and make sure that it's all put away properly. That gives you a role in the lodge where you can then talk to people and start to get to know them, okay? But when lodges just drop new people in and say, okay, you're an odd fellow, figure it out, that does a disservice to those new people, and it makes it a lot harder for them to make the connections that make Odd Fellowship personally meaningful.
I think that's a good point.
Yeah.
I'm also picturing, in a different scenario, like suppose I move to a new town Even now, like I moved to a new town, I don't know anyone, but I see an Oddfellows Hall.
Hmm.
Now, just knowing me myself now, I know some people in Oddfellows. I'm more likely, to pop in, than I would have before, just because there's it's like a familiarity.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I know those people and they're okay.
And
Those,
that's another really big benefit of belonging to a lodge is I've experienced this as I travel. Since visiting other lodges is such an incredibly rare thing nowadays, lodges get really excited when they have a visitor. So when I go visit another lodge somewhere, like earlier this month, Brother Christopher and I were at the Grand Lodge of Wyoming for their session. They were so excited. They loved having us there. And they just loved it. They absolutely loved it. And we were like little celebrities there at the Grand
Yeah,
Lodge.
one of them was
Wyoming.
carrying me around on his back the whole time.
Yeah.
It was brilliant.
Yeah. I mean, it's so friendly in Wyoming.
know.
Just wonderful people. But that's the thing that you get. When you are an Oddfellow, you can go to any lodge in the world because we're kind of international now. Of course, we have North America and Europe, but we also have a lodge in Brazil and one in Lebanon and one in Nigeria, one in Ghana. And, of course, all kinds of amazing Oddfellows throughout the Philippines. So, Scott, next time you're in Southeast Asia, make sure you re-up on the membership.
Mhm.
You can go visit all the lodges in the Philippines. I think they're up to about 25 or 30 now.
wow, that's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So-
the Filipinos have become just wonderful, wonderful Oddfellows. They really are remarkable and wonderful. I've gotten to meet a couple of the brothers from the Philippines at Sovereign, and they're just wonderful people and great members.
What was there a tradition of Odd Fellowship in the Philippines before, or is it just grown and grown?
There was up until probably about the early 20th century. Because if I remember right, Manila Lodge number 1 was chartered in 1872. And the Oddfellows spread across the Pacific Ocean fairly early on. The first independent order of Oddfellows Lodge in the western United States was actually in Honolulu, Hawaii, Excelsior number 1, which still exists. Hello, Taka, if you're listening to this. Taka is one of the brothers in Excelsior number 1. And so that lodge, because it was in Hawaii, which was a major place for trans-Pacific ships to stop, it was easy to spread to Australia, to New Zealand, and of course to the Philippines. So Odd Fellowship somewhere in the early 20th century died out in the Philippines, and a group of brothers over there got interested and brought it back and have done some amazing grassroots work at rebuilding Odd Fellowship in the Philippines. I don't have any of the numbers handy because I didn't look it up to get ready for this show, but like I said, 25 or 30 lodges in the Philippines and some encampments, and I think they even have a canton now.
Yeah, and I think they're closing in on like 1,000 members, aren't they?
Yeah, pretty soon the Philippines will be the ones running the independent order, and they will be electing the sovereign grand master, and those of us in North America will just be sitting around and having chicken adobo at the banquets.
So one of the things that you indicated why you just didn't go back was mainly just your personal life, your schedule, timing wasn't good. You just didn't have the focus or energy that you had other things you wanted to work on. You just didn't want to focus on this becoming an odd fellow thing. And so it's not like you went away mad or unhappy. You just you gave it a try and it was not quite what you were expecting, or just kind of or like, what was it kind of like were you disappointed, or was it kind of like, as far as like your reasons for not going back, or it just kind of just happened that way?
I think it just sort of happened that way. Like, I think if you had cornered me like early on and said,
Mhm.
what do you think about this? And if I was honest with you, I would have said that it was probably kind of a long shot because I was 32. I knew myself well enough to know that I was kind of obsessive about music stuff, and that's mostly where my time would go. And also, I mean, I'd been in Seattle for at least, about 10 years at that point. So I had a lot of friends. So I wasn't at a point where I really needed more social input.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's probably a lot of it. I mean, I had invitations and places to go with people that I was already really comfortable with.
Yeah.
Which was huge.
That's totally valid. I think that's completely a valid reason. And I don't think anybody tried to argue with you about it. So, yeah.
But, yeah, I don't think there's anything about that. I mean, the reality of the business meeting piece of it was like, oh, of course, the initiation, of course, my mind is not going to be blown every second of everything. It's just,
we don't get to do the initiation every meeting.
right. It's like, I don't get to have this like almost hallucinogenic experience every time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it was, yeah. So I didn't leave angry, and like I said, I didn't even remember the guy, correcting my etiquette or protocol or.
Well,
Yeah.
let's talk about that for a moment, because I remember that incident really well. And in the moment, I was really shocked and upset with what had happened. And this is actually something that I use as a teaching example when I go visit other lodges and there are questions about, essentially questions about educating members. Because as Odd Fellows, none of us are compelled to be there in the lodge. And so none of us has an obligation to show up and always do everything perfectly. We try, we do. But there's something that happens. Let's say when a member who works a lot of swing shift finally has a night off on a lodge night, they're able to come to lodge. They don't remember the password. They don't remember the sign. They're sloppy with doing their floor work. They're not walking straight lines and turning square corners. So then it brings up a little bit of a quandary. What's the right way to help this member to do things the way that they should? What happened that night that you were there was the warden of the lodge saw that you didn't give the sign correctly. And honestly, as someone who was there sitting across the room and saw the whole thing, I thought he was being really nitpicky about it, because you gave the sign, you just weren't very definitive with the way you gave it. It's sort of casual like this instead of doing it, really super crisp. And he walked over to the Noble Grand station. And Warden is one of the few people who can actually stand in front of the Noble Grand per protocol. He says, Noble Grand, we have a member in this lodge who's in need of instruction. And as the warden, it's my job to correct anyone who is not giving the signs properly. He really made a very public issue of something that would have been best served if he had talked to you after the meeting and said, hey, I saw that you looked a little unsure about giving the sign. I can remind you of how to do it correctly. That is how I would have handled that, to let you know. But instead, he made a big deal of it publicly, which really made you look bad in the lodge. Now, you may not have cared about that or anything like that. I thought that was a very poor way to handle that, because in the ritual it says we should admonish with candor. We should always be looking to help one another improve in a way that does not make us look bad. Because that is one of those things that I have seen happen in lodges, where a member takes it upon themselves to be the self-improvement police and to start issuing citations to members who aren't as good at doing the ritual or something else as they are. And
Yeah.
that is really kind of a corrosive and divisive thing in a lodge. And I always remembered that and how that happened to you that night. And just how disappointed I was in the lodge because the warden made it into a big deal about himself, basically. He's like, I'm going to show the whole lodge that I know what I'm talking about, and I've read the ritual, and I'm going to do it correctly for the Noble Grand. That is just about self-aggrandizement for the warden. I was very disappointed in that.
Wow. Yeah, hearing you tell that story, usually you think something that makes you really angry, you'll remember.
Yeah.
So maybe it didn't make me super angry, but that's definitely the kind of thing that the reflexive middle finger comes up about. So
Yeah.
like I don't like that kind of petty tyrant kind of behavior.
Mhm.
So I'm sure I was turned off by that as well. And I'm a performer, so looking like a fool in front of people is not a big deal to me. But I don't like people doing stuff like that to
Yeah.
anyone.
And
Yeah.
speaking now as a performer, when you are confident enough in yourself as a performer that you do not mind looking like a fool, that's when you can really tap into that thing that makes performance amazing, because you are completely unbridled in that moment. But then to have someone turn around and say, you may have thought you were doing this right, but I thought you were doing it wrong, and I'm going to point it out to everybody now. That right there, that's the moment that is going to kill the love of Odd Fellowship for anybody, performer or not. That was it was a dick move, is what it was.
Yeah, for sure.
It was terrible.
I mean, had I been in a situation where I was really more invested in doing this thing, I would not be deterred by that. But I was on the edge enough that it was probably maybe that I'm sure that affected, whether I came back. I don't know. Do you remember if I came back the next time, or was that
You
the
didn't.
last?
That was the last meeting you attended.
Yeah, so he might have pushed me over the edge.
Yeah.
That would make sense. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, if only Brother Mark Wolford had been at that meeting that night, even if he wouldn't have changed the outcome, it would have been a hilarious meeting.
Everything with Mark Wolford is hilarious.
Yes.
Not to sidetrack, but I've spoken to him a few times recently, and our politics are radically different from each other.
Yes.
But I love that guy. He is real. Have you all met him before? Does anyone else know this guy?
I don't know who it is.
Yeah, he's the funniest person. Or I mean, he's responsible for a lot of funny in the world.
He is. And I think that if there was anyone who exemplified the spirit of Odd Fellowship in embracing and appreciating those who are completely different from you, I think it's Mark Wolford, because he is so different from you, and he's so different from me, and he's so different from many other people, but yet he loves engaging with people, and he appreciates people who are just completely, absolutely the opposite from him.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's an admirable talent and skill and mindset.
So I have a quick question for you. You had mentioned that part of the reason that you didn't go back may have been you had other engagements going on. Part of it may have been you didn't like the way someone talked to you. I think we can all relate to that kind of stuff.
For sure. Yeah.
So looking at it 20 years down the road, do you think if you were to have been initiated now rather than 20 years ago, do you think that you might potentially look at it differently? Or do you think that it would still be the same outcome? I know that that's a totally hypothetical thing, but
yeah,
it is kind of worth thinking about,
Yeah, everything for me is, it's kind of a calculation of like, if there was a hall in West Seattle, which I don't think there is.
No, not anymore.
Like for me, like Toby. Well, Toby knows this because you're local. You know, the West Seattle Bridge is broken.
Yes.
So getting anything from here is like it's a major pain. So it would be like because like getting to a meeting would be like probably an hour each way.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Like that Ballard place, at least an hour to get there.
Oh, yeah.
Ridiculous, right?
Yeah,
So something like that is, that plays strong in my mind. But again, if I think the best scenario to do that for me would be I move to a new place and the traffic isn't as bad as here. Because if I do move to a new place, I'm not going to move to a place that's worse than this.
That would be hard to find traffic worse than Seattle, especially since you have a house in West Seattle and no bridge that connects you to the rest of Seattle. For those listeners not in the Seattle area, imagine, if you will, no bridge between Manhattan and Brooklyn or Queens. Just like no way to get there. It's like, okay, you've got to like take a boat to get there.
You want me to walk?
Yeah, that is essentially the situation with West Seattle, because it's isolated on a peninsula on the other side of the river, sticking out into Puget Sound, where you can't get to it easily, and the 4-lane bridge that carried all the traffic to and from West Seattle is broken, and so no traffic can carry that bridge. Nobody can go over the West Seattle Bridge, so you have to take these long, circuitous detours to get anywhere else.
That sounds like Staten Island.
Yeah. It's like you literally can't get to West Seattle without like a 5-mile trip is a 45-mile detour way around through South King County. So that is perfectly understandable, just the transportation issue of it. And in the days when there were multiple lodges in major cities like Seattle, that wasn't as much of a problem, because there would have been a lodge probably at the junction in West Seattle, or, somewhere not too far away. But as it is, Seattle has one lodge, and it's north of the ship canal, which means it's very difficult to get there from anywhere else that isn't north of the ship canal.
Yeah. But let's make a scenario where there is one in West Seattle.
Yeah.
And when Toby joined, and when I later joined for a minute, the idea was, we're gonna do this thing, and it's a for the good thing, and it's also possibly an opportunity for some of us to use this space as a performance space for our bands and stuff. We can have events here, and like as I remember, like your wedding reception, Toby, was at that hall.
It was.
We did a recording session with your band, like a live recording session in front of an audience at that hall. I don't know if anything came of that. I don't know if that recording went anywhere, but and then there were some other events where we used that hall, and it was a lovely place to do it. So that, I mean, especially given like, what COVID has done to everything as far as performance venues around here, that if logistically it made sense, that would be pretty cool to do a scenario like that. It's like we can make this lodge what we want to, which is I think what everybody does, right? It's like
that is
this is what I'm into.
If you ever get a chance to go back and listen to some of this episodes of our podcast, a few months ago we talked to Brother Ivan Kocher from Dallas Lodge 44 in Texas. They have a huge arts community in Dallas, and the nexus of that community is the Oddfellows Lodge, because a lot of the artists who are in Dallas belong to that lodge. And so a lot of the community activities get coordinated through that lodge. And it makes for a wonderful way, because you've already got an umbrella organization. You want to have a juried show, you've got the hall to do it in, you've got the people to help organize it. And so that is a fantastic way that particular lodge serves its community by being a home for visual artists. And we've talked to some other lodges that take on particular projects, like the San Fernando Lodge, just north of Los Angeles in California. They do a lot of community stuff in the community, and they have a lot of those other community groups come in and use their hall for their meetings, their dinners, their receptions, and things like that. So whatever you can do to organize something like that, you get a bunch of members together who want to do that, and you can literally do that with your lodge. That is one of the great things about having a lodge. And if you go back a little bit in Seattle history, you're familiar with the old Empty Space Theater in Fremont.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, that was an Oddfellows Hall. That was Fremont Lodge 86.
Cool.
And eventually the lodge gave up their charter somehow. I don't remember how they did it. They might have consolidated with Ballard, or they might have just given up their charter. That building went on to serve for many years as the Empty Space Theater. What could have happened was that was originally a policeman's lodge. And so a lot of members of Seattle Police Department were members of that lodge. You know, if a bunch of theater people had joined that lodge and kept the lodge going, they could have used it as their theatrical space and done that as an extension of their work in the lodge. There are all kinds of ways in which our lodges can be of service to the community, and many lodges have chosen the arts as a way to do that. So that is certainly a very viable option. I mean, it's like Ainsley, your lodge there in Illinois, you're above a tattoo shop.
Yes. And definitely when we got our lodge chartered 6 years ago now, Dallas 44 has been a template that has kind of been loosely followed by us to kind of, for as far as, you know, the group ideas and events and stuff that we do. And while not everybody in the lodge is an artist, there is definitely a large group of us that are. And one of the new projects that we're starting is called Art Fellows. And that's going to be like a once a month kind of group thing where people could kind of come together, and we're going to do little classes or just kind of you hang out and do your art. So like the first one we're going to do is like an acrylic pour class, and one of our lodge members is going to lead that one. And then the second one we're going to do is a Bob Ross painting class, and that's going to be led by somebody else who they're not a member, but maybe eventually, you know, by them kind of doing stuff with us, it'll inspire them to make the jump over and join. But to basically do art things as a vehicle, as an outlet for us, but also as a way to attract the kind of people we want to be joining as members.
Now, I think this is probably a good place for us to pause, take a break. We're going to listen to an ad from our wonderful sponsors at Pig and a Pug Bath Stuff. And then, after the ad, we've got not one, but two great things. First of all, Scott was kind enough to send us one of the tracks off of his most recent recording. So we're going to give that a listen after the break. And we're also going to bring back the Lodge shout-out because we had a nomination of a Lodge for the shout-out. So we're going to take a quick break, listen to this commercial from Pig and a Pug, and then we'll be back with some more information and some music from Scott Adams.
Hi. You know the crazy lady outside the coffee shop? The one who screams at everyone who walks by about how the Church of Scientology controls the price of avocados? Well, can you remember how she smells? If you're using store-bought soaps, that's probably how you smell right now. I know what you're thinking. Is this why my last girlfriend left me? Well, that's a complex issue that maybe we'll get into some other time. Where was I? Oh yes, Pig and a Pug. Founded in the year 1981, they have been supplying soaps, candles, and assorted bath products the world over, basically since Moses wore short pants. Not only do I record the commercials, but I'm also one of the converted. Their sandalwood hot processed soaps have made my scaly lizard-like skin feel silky like the finest mashed potatoes that you've ever had. For listeners of this podcast, and this podcast only, Pig and a Pug have extended to you a special 24% off coupon to be used on Etsy. Just use the code THANKYOU24 at checkout and you're on your way. Look them up on Facebook, Instagram, and Etsy. Also, select retail merchants. Pig and a Pug, Pig and a Pug, Pig and a Pug.
All right, welcome back to the Three Links Oddcast. We're here talking to Seattle area musician Scott Adams, and he has kindly favored us with a track off of his most recent album. So we're going to give that a listen. Before we listen to it, is there anything you want to tell us about this track?
This song is called I Will Not Die, and the writing part of it came from a period of my life, maybe 2 or 3 years ago, when I would get to work about a half hour early. I teach kids piano and guitar lessons. So I'd get to the school and go to my room where I teach and take out a piece of paper, write some lyrics really fast, grab my usually guitar, sometimes piano, and set something that I wrote to music, record it on my phone, write down the chord changes that I used on the same piece of paper with the lyrics, and then put it in a box and forget about it. So this song came from that. And what I did was I made this record that you'll hear this recording. There are 12 songs on the record. I took all these songs that I'd created over a few years. Like, it ended up being like 60 songs. And those were after I'd taken out the ones that I hated. So 60 songs that I thought, oh, these are halfway decent songs. I like these. And I sent them to a guy that was going to produce the record. His name is Ken Stringfellow. He plays for a band called the Posies. He played for REM as a sideman for like good 10 years or something. Played for a reunion of Big Star. Anyway, this guy's really great. He lives in the studio. He's super great in the studio, like an overdub king, but he also, mixes and engineers and produces and does all this stuff. So anyways, I had planned to make a record with him, and I sent him 60 of these songs in a Dropbox folder. I sent him all these songs, and he picked, 15 or 16 of them, and this was one of them. So I had a few months before, we were planning to record last summer, but then it's COVID, so when are we going to do that? He lives in France, so getting here was a big deal for him. But we have managed to make a date in September to record. Meanwhile, I just worked on these 15 or 16 tunes to just refine them. This particular one, the big chorus part, didn't exist before. And I added it last year while I was refining these songs. And it's interesting because when I was teaching the band this song, it has there's a bar of it's the most of the song is in 4, but then there's in this intro part 1 2 3 and I didn't even think about it because it just felt intuitive, this line, but it's a little wonky. And when I was teaching it to my guitarist friend, Randy Neal, who Toby knows, I know
he's a monster player.
Yeah, but he was just like, wait a minute. We went round and round about that.
We dropped a beat there. It's like, yeah, that's awesome.
What are you doing, man? No, but he's a pro, so he was like, oh, I like it, but what is it, so we can figure out how to do it, and then teaching it to the rest of the band and stuff. And then when we recorded the band playing it, I played accordion on that one, and then also so you'll hear an accordion solo in the middle. You're also going to hear trumpets doing that, reinforcing that bum 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 bum, which is the same music as the chorus. It's just doing that, and kind of I don't know. I think of it like Appalachian Spring, Aaron Copland kind of way. It's just got that feel. Um, and what was I going to say about that? Oh, and also, so Jim Canota played the trumpets on that. He is or was an Oddfellows member
Yes.
in Ballard.
Yep.
And then also, aiming to, so I do this accordion solo, kind of with my like best Balkan kind of accordion style thingy that I do. And then my friend Amy Denayo also played on it, and she is or was an Oddfellow member in Ballard.
Yeah, she's still a member.
And she played the sax and kind of did a duet with me on my little solo. And anyway, and then there's a bunch of backing vocals by Ken and Amy both. And anyway, I'm really proud of the way this came out. It's atypical of the rest of the record, but yeah. Anyway, I hope you like it.
Well, I can already say before we play it for our listeners, I really like it. I love the production of it because at the beginning of the episode here, you mentioned listening to a lot of AM radio in the 1970s, and this totally has that sound. It's got that definite, the horns with the band and everything. It's got that sound, and I love that sound. So this is called I Will Not Die by Birds May Bite.
Sit down at the table across from you. The wine warms me to whatever comes, and I let the cool wind cool, and I'm still warm inside. That frostbite, I will not die. Stay up all night with me. Your smile warms my foolish frozen heart to whatever goes, and I let you walk wherever you want to. Step on me, I will not die. I will be tired, I will not die. I will be tired, I will not die. I won't be tired, I will not die, not die. Bell breaks, we look at each other and we go on natural ways, and the cool, cruel wind is still my heart, and the fight, I will not die. I won't be tired, 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 I will not die. Not
I like it. Very nice. I especially like that sax part where you're singing the melody and Amy's going do 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 going up there. That is classic. And not only is it a great song, but I say this as speaking now as a musician, that is a very well-assembled arrangement and production of the song. To put on my old man hat now and complain, there are too many pop songs that are made now by copying and pasting and just adding and subtracting layers to create interest through the course of a song. Now, you've got 2.5 minutes in a pop format. That's not a whole lot of time to do a lot of development, but yet a lot of really great pop songwriters were able to work within that format and get enough development and interest through creative musicianship. The example I always think of for that is David Bowie. I think he did really well with coming up with new things to do on the second chorus of a song, or on a bridge, or on a final verse, or something like that, which kept the interest building throughout the song. And I think what you've done with that recording is similar in many ways to what David Bowie was doing when he was really at the height of his creative powers, because it was something that was always familiar, yet always with really good development, really good new ideas coming in. I think that was a great track. I really liked it.
Oh, thank you, Toby. What I can take credit for and what I can't take credit for. What I can take credit for is a little bit with the architecture, altering it just a little bit to make room for something different to happen in different spots. You know, just playing with the form a little, like having a partial instrumental chorus in one spot, and then later on the full chorus, and then later on doubling it. Just little things like that to make it so it's not just literally a copy and paste. And then also just the quality of the collaborations, you know, like the folks that played on it brought it, and I didn't write out the parts for any of that. Nice. Amy came up with that part that you're talking about, you know, and they all did that. You know, I gave them a lead sheet, you know, basic chords, basic melody, go to town, and they you know, they listened and did it. And you know, I think if you know, you encourage someone to do their thing with it, they're going to just play throughout the whole tune, and they're going to do it a little bit differently the next time. And the development just kind of takes care of itself a lot of times. And Bowie worked with amazing players too, and trusted them, and rightly so. And I think I don't know. That's all I have to say about that. Thank you.
I definitely got like Dexy's Midnight Runners sort of madness sort of vibe from the runs and the way I think it's like the accordion and saxophone together and the trumpet just really kind of gave me that very like late 70s, early 80s kind of fresh, new, exciting, like we're going somewhere new with this stuff. And it was a very cohesive and uplifting kind of a song that contrary to the title was, you know, like about like I'll not die. It wasn't about surviving. It definitely sounded more about like thriving. So awesome.
Thank you.
Now, Christopher, did you have anything you wanted to contribute on that wonderful song that Scott shared with us?
I would say that you play the accordion like you definitely grew up listening to Slayer. So, yeah.
That may be the compliment of the entire show right there.
Mission accomplished.
Yeah. You know, it's funny. Like, I think I would love to be like that guy that translates music like that to the accordion. Cause I was
like the bagpipe guy that plays the AC/DC with the flames.
Yeah. But does it in a way that it doesn't sound cheesy, you know, if that's possible. But it's like things that are relatively easy to play on the guitar, like that, you know, whatever. It's relatively, I mean, it takes some work for sure, but the guitar is made for stuff like that. The accordion, oh my God.
How do you palm mute on an accordion?
Exactly. It's some of that stuff is so hard to do on the accordion. Like, so I'm probably not going to be the guy that does that.
Well, I tell you, if you ever really want a challenge for the accordion, try and translate "I am the doctor" from Doctor Who to the accordion. That was a challenge. That's one that Paul Taub would have been proud of me pulling off.
But you know about Paul, right?
Yeah, I know. I heard the news about him, but he was one at Cornish who always wanted to do those kind of really progressive, kind of off the wall, let's just try this and see if it works kind of things. And at first, working on that, which is something I did for the Grand Master of California, Michael Greenziger, at first I was like, I don't know how the hell this is ever going to work. But I went through the piano score of it and very carefully, translated it to the accordion as best as possible. The thing that actually helped the most, and to get off into the weeds musically here, was to listen to the orchestral version. Because the piano score tells you what notes to play. But listening to the orchestral recording of it that the BBC did really told me how to play it on accordion, because accordion is a wind instrument and it has that really dynamic quality. And so the opening of it is in 7/8 time. And putting the accents in with the bellows and really building that up, and then being able to layer the longer melody over the top of it. Listening to the orchestra play it really told me how to play it on accordion, as opposed to just picking out the notes that were in the piano transcription. So that was an interesting way of, kind of jumbling things around musically to make sense out of them. And it actually turned out to be quite good. The Grand Master of California was suitably impressed, and hopefully I will be able to go to his session next May in Modesto and perform it for him live, because that would be very nice to do.
That's cool.
So the other special thing after the break is our shout out. We like to recognize accomplishments of lodges who do great things. So if you know of a lodge, encampment, canton, anywhere out there in the world of Odd Fellowship that's doing something great, we want to hear about it, and we want to spread the word to everybody. So we are asking you to email us at 3linksoddcast, that is the numeral 3, the number 3, linksoddcast, at gmail.com, and tell us about these lodges that are doing something great. For this episode, the shout out is going to Rockbridge Lodge number 58 of Virginia. They did a great piece on the local TV station about what the lodge is doing and their charitable activities, and just kind of engaging with the community to get everything out there and to promote Odd Fellowship. So we want to recognize Rockbridge Lodge number 58 of the jurisdiction of Virginia. So now moving on with the show here, I have a question for you, Scott. If you were to go back in time 20 years and have a different kind of experience with Odd Fellowship, what do you think the lodge could have or should have done differently to keep you as a member?
I'm not, given that time and that place where my head was at that time, I'm not sure if the lodge could have done anything different. I'm a kind of a thrill seeker. A lot of times I like to travel. I like to be in a place. I like to have my mind blown. And, that initiation was a great mind blowing experience. I'm not sure unless there was something in place that really kept me there, like this is going to be the performance venue that you're going to want to play at all the time for the next 10 years or 12 years. And short of that, or short of there being a lot of women hanging around, I'm not sure if or just maybe just a little bit different community that was like more where I was at musically. Mm-hmm. Just a couple more faces of people that I played with at the time. But I remember Toby being the only one that was in place at that time. It's not anybody's fault that Like even the guy that showed me the door, that
Yes. Yeah.
even that guy, it's not his fault.
Well, here's a follow-up question to that. Let's say there were a lodge that was easily accessible for you in your current situation. What do you think would inspire you to want to go back and be reinstated as a member?
I think that community, like here is a place where you know people, and it's growing and it's vibrant, it's involved with the community. And it's not that the Ballard Lodge wasn't, it's not that at all, but what you guys were talking about, and I know what I observed in Missoula was like this too. That's like, it's really integral to what's going on. I like being part of something like that. And if something was, reasonable to get to and felt like that, I would embrace it. Yeah. So I think, just keep doing what you do, make it vibrant, make it connect. It's all about connecting.
I think that's an excellent answer. And I appreciate, first of all, taking the time to sit down and share your music with us and talk about your experiences. But I especially appreciate the candor of sharing your particular experience, because a lot of lodges are looking for answers right now, especially coming out of the pandemic. How can we get people back in our halls, and how can we get people back here to participate in the organization? And I think that by you sharing your experience, you've really given a lot of thought and insight to this that can be very helpful to a lot of other lodges. I think the most important thing is that sense of community that you're talking about. Because one of the things I love most about being an Oddfellow is I know that I'm really a part of something very meaningful. I've had the experience of visiting other lodges when I'm traveling, and that sense of acceptance that you can find within a group that exists. And that's something that I think we have that's better than anything else. And that's why I am so evangelistic about sharing that, because I want other people to enjoy that same sense of community that I have being an Oddfellow.
Yeah.
Have you heard the good news?
And what would that be, brother?
Ask me, I may know.
Well, I think that pretty much wraps up this episode of the Three Links Oddcast, which means we can move to the Odd Podge. This is the part of the show where we share whatever we want. And Scott, since you are our special guest here on this episode, I will let you have the first Odd Podge.
All right. So Seattle is experiencing a heat wave right now. So I went outside to take the compost out, and that's about it. So I've been indoors. I brought a bunch of boxes back from Spokane, where I'm from, last weekend. And in those boxes are... My mom had better things to do than organize memorabilia, but she did throw it all in boxes. So I can go straight from 1906 to 1986, right in photos right next to each other in a box. So I've come across all these things that I have no memory of whatsoever. But one of the things that I came across today that just blew my mind, I had no idea these existed, were these letters. It's a pile of letters, like probably 3/4 of an inch or an inch thick, of these folded up little letters typed that my dad wrote to me when I was probably 4 or 5 years old. And hey, Christmas is coming up, and I know you're going to be really excited. And I know that there's that show on KHQ that you like with Bloody Blah and Bloody Blah. He's specific about who these performers were that I apparently was really into. And he's like, maybe you can be on that show sometime, but you'll have to learn how to play the guitar or the piano. that'll take some work, but
Yeah.
I know you'll be up for it because you'll be so excited about being in the show. Just little encouraging things like that, and like he took the time, and it looks like there are like, I mean, there are just tons of these things, and I think written over less than a year's time. So he just wrote all these cool letters to me, and I couldn't have read. I don't think I read at that point, so I don't know if he read them to me or what. I read through a bunch of those today, and it just blew my mind. So what I have in my mind is gratitude for the love that I was shown as a child.
That's wonderful.
From both my parents. But my dad was a complicated relationship, so I've harbored some ill will over the years, even though he's passed. And I wish I had realized, when I was younger, while he was still here. And I know everybody has their thing like that. So yeah. Anyway, gratitude. That's what I'm saying. That's what my thing is. Gratitude.
That's wonderful. Gratitude is a wonderful thing to have.
Yeah.
All right, who wants to go next with the Odd Podge? Christopher, you want to jump in here?
It's going to be hard to follow that one up because I have something in mind, and now I was going to go to say it, and it just sounds so ridiculous.
Oh, that's okay. Just go ahead and share.
That thing is ridiculous.
This is a nest in the tree of trust.
Okay. So this week, Scott was talking about having his mind blown. I had my mind was blown quite a bit this week as well. It turns out that strawberries that I have been eating in the supermarket, that I have, the best strawberry you could have in the supermarket,
Like the premium organic,
yeah,
bougie strawberry.
I thought those strawberries were good until I tried a Pierce County strawberry. Oh my word. They are like little strawberry shaped cakes that are just the most amazing. I cannot say enough. So if you're listening to this, you live in another state, you live in another country, Pierce County, we're probably about 45 minutes south of Seattle. So you'll want to fly into SeaTac Airport and, just head south till you see strawberry fields. Buy them because they're going to be life-changing.
Did it bring a tear to your eye?
It brought saliva to my mouth.
Okay, I'll take it.
So, yeah.
That's just as good.
Yeah. Pierce
Maybe
County
even
strawberries, just
Yeah.
like Mama used to bring you.
Now, I have to add the postscript to that, which is June, of course, is strawberry season around here, and the Puyallup Valley, which is very close to where I live in Graham, they have some amazing berry farms. And Saturday, I took Christopher down. We went to Pika's Berry Farms, which is an old Czech family outside of Puyallup, and they farm several acres of berries, and they had probably about 30 flats of strawberries there. We bought 3 flats, took them home, and I made some homemade strawberry ice cream, which is what I did most of the day today. And Christopher had never had an actual vine-ripe, fresh strawberry picked within a couple of hours. And so if you go to the store, you get strawberries like here on the West Coast. They're usually from somewhere in the Central Valley of California. You bite into it, it's mostly flavorless. It's kind of white in the middle with a little light pink on the outside. These are dark crimson the whole way through. They're very soft, they're very sweet, and they're amazing. And so this is why in the month of June, I always go a little crazy and make 3 gallons of homemade strawberry ice cream and then put the rest of the strawberries in the freezer to enjoy for the rest of the year. Because they're so good. They're just amazing.
This is why I want to hurry this podcast up, because I want to dive into one of those buckets and rub it all over myself.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah,
And
it's
who
very
would-
hot out. Scott wasn't kidding.
Yeah.
It's very hot outside.
Very hot.
Yes.
Oh,
So
come on.
I'll do the next Odd Podge. I just came back from the annual session of the Grand Lodge of Washington, which I have been attending faithfully since 2003 when I first took the Grand Lodge degree. And we had a wonderful session. Our visitor from Sovereign Grand Lodge was Sovereign Grand Warden Michelle Heckert of the jurisdiction of Iowa.
Saw that.
And Michelle is just delightful. She is so wonderful. She's going to be a fantastic, amazing Sovereign Grand Master in about another year here when she'll get promoted up to that job. And just watching her work, the way that she came in and handled everything and observed our session for the Grand Lodge, I was so impressed with her. But mostly, she did something very special at the session, which I especially appreciate. So, as Grand Musician of the Grand Lodge, a title which I've held since 2003, with the exception of the 3 years I was going through the chairs as Grand Master, you know, there's always the part at the end of Grand Lodge where you pass the jewel from the old officer to the new officer. And so for all of these years, it was, I stand here with the Grand Musician, and then I walk to the other line and just hand the jewel to myself. So I lined up to do the exchange of jewels, and Michelle said, wait a minute. She came down to the end of the line where the Grand Musician stands, and she said, I have been the one standing on the end of the line all by myself so many times for this. I'm going to present you with your jewel and regalia as Grand Musician. And I thought that was just the coolest thing that she did, because she knows what it's like to be the one standing at the end of the line when everybody else, you know, Grand Conductor is handing the regalia and the Grand Herald and they're exchanging jewels, and the Grand Warden becomes the Deputy Grand Master. And, you know, there's that great moment at the end of Grand Lodge where all the officers exchange. And I never, ever, ever had anyone to exchange with, except for the year that I handed it off to Greg so I could be Grand Warden, and then he handed it back to me after I was done as Grand Master. And it was just amazing and very meaningful to have Michelle there to do that. So thank you, Sister Michelle. You're going to do a great job as Deputy Sovereign Grand Master, and probably an even better job, if that's possible, as Sovereign Grand Master.
Awesome. So I guess I'm the last one to go, right?
Yep.
So we finally had our first lodge meeting back in person a couple weeks ago. Yay! And we set up a date for our initiations. So hopefully, we had 9 candidates fill out with applications. So I'm not exactly sure how many will end up sticking around and doing the initiation, but as far as the date goes, I don't know offhand if it'll be before or after the next recording. So if it's before, I'll not have any stories yet, but I'll catch y'all up eventually on post initiation, how many people we put through, and that will be a future on Podge.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for listening. Thank you, Scott, for joining us and sharing your music and your story in Odd Fellowship. Our next episode is going to be, I know I say this every time, it's going to be a special one because it's our 1-year anniversary.
Woohoo!
Hard to believe we've done 28 episodes of the Three Links Oddcast, and we're going to start our new season in July. It'll be the first anniversary of our first show, and we're going to line up some really special stuff for that, and kind of get some updates on what's been happening with various people that we've talked to. So we've got a big extravaganza coming up for the anniversary show on our next episode. Thank you so much for listening, everyone, and goodbye.